Welcome back to Read and Reflect, the podcast where we bring classic and thought-provoking books to life. I'm your host, Jason Smith, and today we're diving into a book that feels more relevant now than ever, Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. Snyder, a renowned historian and professor at Yale, specializes in European history, authoritarian regimes, and the lessons we can learn from the past. In On Tyranny, he distills historical wisdom into 20 clear and urgent lessons for resisting authoritarianism and safeguarding democracy. In today's episode, we will explore the core ideas of On Tyranny. We'll touch upon some of its inspirational passages, discuss its key themes and analysis, and outline the central arguments Snyder presents. Crucially, we will analyze the historical context that informs the book and examine recent political developments that underscore its enduring relevance. We will also look at contemporary examples, including the Trump administration and the situation in Turkey under Erdoğan, and consider how recent events like the arrest of Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu might relate to the book's lessons. So, whether you're a history buff, a concerned citizen, or just someone looking for guidance in uncertain times, this episode is for you. Reading On Tyranny for the first time, I felt a deep sense of urgency. The book doesn't just recount history, it calls us to action. Personally, I find On Tyranny deeply resonant because it connects historical tragedies with the challenges we face today. It serves as a stark reminder that the erosion of democratic norms and the rise of authoritarianism are not relics of the past but ongoing threats that require vigilance and active resistance from each of us. The book empowers readers by providing concrete steps individuals can take to safeguard democracy and prevent the slide towards tyranny. Snyder's book is filled with striking, urgent passages that challenge us to think critically about the world around us. Here are a few that stood out. Do not obey in advance. Most of the power of authoritarianism is freely given. In times like ours, individuals think ahead to what a more repressive government will want and then offer themselves without being asked. A citizen who adapts in this way is teaching power what it can do. This idea that tyranny doesn't always take power by force but rather by people's passive compliance is chilling. It forces us to recognize the importance of conscious resistance. We all have to defend institutions. It is institutions that help us to preserve decency. They need our help as well. Do not speak of our institutions unless you make them yours by acting on their behalf. Institutions do not protect themselves. They fall one after the other unless each is defended from the beginning. So choose an institution you care about. A court, a newspaper, a law, a labor union, and take its side. Another passage that stood out to me is, post-truth is pre-fascism. To abandon facts is to abandon freedom. If nothing is true, then no one can criticize power because there is no basis upon which to do so. If nothing is true, then all is spectacle. The biggest wallet pays for the most blinding lights. This warning about the dangers of misinformation and the manipulation of facts feels particularly urgent in our digital age, where misinformation spreads rapidly on social media and trust in institutions erodes. Snyder also reminds us, the mistake is to assume that rulers who came to power through institutions cannot change or destroy those very institutions, even when that is exactly what they have announced that they intend to do. This is a sobering reminder that democracy is fragile, and history has shown us that authoritarian figures often use the very system they seek to dismantle to consolidate power. The central arguments of On Tyranny revolve around individual responsibility and the patterns of authoritarianism. Snyder highlights how authoritarianism doesn't happen overnight. It creeps in gradually when democratic institutions weaken, when people stop questioning authority, and when truth becomes malleable. Snyder argues that seemingly small acts of compliance or indifference can contribute to the normalization of authoritarianism. He posits that by understanding the historical patterns of tyranny, citizens can be better equipped to recognize and resist contemporary threats to democratic values. The 20 lessons are essentially concrete actions individuals can take to counter these threats. 3 key themes stand out. 1. The fragility of democracy. Democracy is not self-sustaining. It requires constant effort and vigilance from its citizens. When people become complacent, institutions that uphold democratic values weaken, making it easier for authoritarian forces to rise. Historical examples, from the fall of the Weimar Republic to more recent democratic backsliding, show that democracy erodes when citizens fail to actively defend it. 2. The role of truth. A key strategy of authoritarian leaders is to blur the line between truth and falsehood, making it difficult for people to distinguish fact from propaganda. The deliberate spread of disinformation, the discrediting of independent journalism, and the rewriting of history all serve to destabilize public trust. Snyder warns that once a society accepts alternative facts as legitimate, it becomes susceptible to manipulation and control. 3. The power of individual action. Resistance starts with individuals taking small, meaningful actions, like supporting independent journalism, participating in local elections, and refusing to normalize extremism. Snyder emphasizes that tyranny thrives when ordinary people assume that their actions don't matter. He calls on readers to reject cynicism and take responsibility for their role in upholding democracy. Snyder's advice is practical. For example, take responsibility for the face of the world. The symbols of today enable the reality of tomorrow. Notice the swastikas and the other signs of hate. Do not look away and do not get used to them. Remove them yourself and set an example for others to do so. He encourages us to recognize how symbols of hate and oppression normalize authoritarianism. Whether it's graffiti, propaganda, or discriminatory speech, we must confront and reject it. Another key lesson: be calm when the unthinkable arrives. He writes, "Modern tyranny is terror management. When the terrorist attack comes, remember that authoritarians exploit such events in order to consolidate power. The sudden disaster that requires the end of checks and balances, the dissolution of opposition parties, the suspension of freedom of expression, the right to a fair trial, and so on, is the oldest trick in the Hitlerian book. Do not fall for it." Authoritarian regimes often take advantage of crises, whether real or manufactured, to seize more power. Snyder urges citizens to remain level-headed and resist the temptation to accept drastic changes in the name of security or stability. A society's willingness to relinquish freedoms in moments of fear has historically paved the way for repressive regimes. Snyder also highlights how authoritarian leaders exploit divisions within society. Practice corporeal politics. By this, he means that real political engagement requires people to be physically present, attending protests, organizing in communities, and having face-to-face conversations. The digital sphere, while useful, is no substitute for real-world activism. Snyder warns that political movements that exist only online can be easily manipulated, monitored, or erased. Ultimately, On Tyranny is a call to action. It reminds us that the fight against authoritarianism is ongoing and that every individual has a role to play. The question is not whether tyranny can happen in democratic societies. It's whether citizens will act to prevent it. The historical context of On Tyranny is crucial to understanding its urgency. Snyder draws heavily on the experiences of Nazi Germany and Stalinist Russia, illustrating how these regimes systematically dismantled democratic institutions, spread propaganda, and used violence and terror to consolidate power. He emphasizes the speed and unexpectedness with which these transformations occurred, warning against complacency. In terms of recent political developments, the book gained significant attention following the 2016 U.S. presidential election and the subsequent Trump administration. Many observers noted parallels between the tactics described by Snyder and the rhetoric and actions of the Trump administration, such as the dissemination of misinformation, attacks on the media and judiciary, and the cultivation of a personality cult. The questioning of election results and the events leading up to the January 6th Capitol riot further underlined the fragility of democratic norms in the United States, echoing Snyder's warnings about the importance of defending institutions and believing in truth. Looking at Turkey under Recep Tayyip Erdoğan, we see another contemporary example that resonates with the themes of On Tyranny. Over the past decade, there has been a noticeable erosion of democratic freedoms, including freedom of the press, speech, and assembly. The government's response to the 2016 coup attempt led to widespread arrests and purges, raising concerns about the rule of law and the independence of the judiciary. The increasing centralization of power and the suppression of dissent align with Snyder's analysis of how authoritarianism can take hold. Snyder writes, "The parties that remade states and suppressed rivals were not omnipotent from the start. They exploited a historic moment to make political life impossible for their opponents. So support the multi-party system and defend the rules of democratic elections. Vote in local and state elections while you can." The recent arrest of Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu is another concerning development in Turkey. While the legal proceedings are ongoing, many perceive this as a politically motivated move to undermine a popular opposition figure. This incident can be viewed through the lens of On Tyranny's lessons about the importance of an independent judiciary and the dangers of using legal mechanisms to silence political opponents. Snyder cautions against the politicization of institutions and the erosion of checks and balances, which appear to be relevant in this context. Such actions can contribute to a climate of fear and discourage political participation, key steps in the normalization of authoritarianism as described in the book. Snyder warns us to be alert to the use of the words extremism and terrorism. We have to be alive to the fatal notions of emergency and exception, and be angry about the treacherous use of patriotic vocabulary. In summary, today's episode of Read and Reflect explored Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. Ultimately, this episode served as an introduction to the crucial insights offered in On Tyranny, emphasizing its timely warnings and its call for vigilance and action to safeguard democracy against the ever-present threat of tyranny. We outlined the central argument of learning from the past to resist modern authoritarianism and analyzed the historical context of 20th century totalitarianism. Finally, we examined contemporary examples like the Trump administration and the political situation in Turkey, including the recent arrest of Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, to understand the book's enduring relevance. The book tells people to stand out. Snyder writes, "Someone has to. It is easy to follow along, can feel strange to do or say something different, but without that unease, there is no freedom. Remember Rosa Parks. The moment you set an example, the spell of the status quo is broken, and others will follow." Join us next time on Read and Reflect, as we explore another book that grapples with the complexities of human nature and societal structures. If you enjoyed our exploration of On Tyranny, please subscribe to Read and Reflect and leave us a rating or review. Share this episode with anyone who loves thought-provoking analysis. Thanks for turning the page with us. Until next time, keep reading, keep reflecting, and stay vigilant.